And a good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special Westerosi Ninja Election 2020 live stream. Tonight, we will be given a preview of the New Hampshire Democratic primary that will be held tomorrow night, February 11th, 2020. It will be the first primary of this election 2020 season. Yes, it's a primary, not a caucus, for anybody out there asking that question. In what I believe to be the most critical election of our lifetimes, the enthusiasm is high, so let's get going. Joining me this evening as a last minute fill in is none other than one of my partners in crime, Dog, from the Dog Show, to give us insights on what we can expect tomorrow night and to provide any other opinions that he may have. So what's going on, Dog? How are you doing tonight?
Oh, just really excited to be here right now with Jamil. Yeah, this was literally like about 5 minutes before you had to go there. So, yeah, just got set up and ready to rock here. Talk some Democratic national primaries happening here, right? Oh, in New Hampshire, right? I
Yep.
know the Concord is the capital of New Hampshire. Is that correct, Mel?
That is correct. I actually
Yeah,
have a
not a lot
map
of
of New
folks would
Hampshire
know
with
that.
Concord as a star.
Yes,
The,
and
the big.
not a lot of folks would know that. However, Dog does know that. And I'll be able to share my some of my opinions, maybe ask Milt a few questions as we go through. So definitely been some interesting news happening. Especially with the Iowa thing happening right now, and
Mhm.
then also with this coming up tomorrow night. So it's been pretty exciting. So
Cool, cool, cool.
thanks for having me,
Now,
Milt.
now for people who don't know you, do you want to share what your uh, what your political leanings are in terms of
Oh,
the overall
absolutely. Yes.
spectrum?
I just so folks know, I am I'm where all those folks are way over there to the left. I'm usually like way over there to the right. Or, I try to get as far right away from the people that are way far over to the left. I usually try to get as far away from them as I usually can. So I guess we can kind of, that's why I really want to, talk to you a little bit about some of these candidates a little bit. What would, kind of make me possibly sway, my vote possibly. So, but normally I do lean Republican. So just so folks know.
All right, so we actually have a kind of a left versus right, even though I'm not really a lefty, right? I'm definitely not a social progressive, let's put it that way. But I do believe in structural change, especially on the economic side of things. So just call me an economic populist right now. So anyway, an independent economic populist. Yeah. Anyway, so most important thing, guys, is that I would like to stress that any opinions given tonight are not necessarily representative of future guests on this channel, as I do live streams and videos on a variety of different subjects. Okay? So don't hold it against anybody who happens to come on later on in this channel. And with that, let's go ahead and start. Why don't we? With talking about the New Hampshire primary tomorrow. That is going to happen tomorrow night, Tuesday, February 11th, 2020. Okay, polls open at 7 a.m. in the morning, local time, and they close at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, the primary type is open. Okay, meaning that voters can change their registered party on the day of the primary and vote. So if you're a Republican and you just feel like voting for a Democrat, tomorrow, you can. You can just kind of change yourself to a Democrat, and basically go ahead and vote in the primaries. Now, there's a difference between primaries and caucuses. Last Monday, February the 3rd, we had the Iowa caucuses, right? A caucus is where you basically have a group of people, gathered together in a gym, and then basically they get split up by, their support amongst, several candidates, and basically the votes get counted and tallied, and supposedly these numbers get basically transferred over to the statewide Democratic Party. Well, that didn't really happen that great on in Iowa, but that's how caucus is supposed to work. So basically, you have many locations where people just congregate together and basically tell their neighbors and everybody else in public who they're voting for, who they stand behind. A primary is more like your typical election that you might be familiar with, in a general presidential election, right? You basically go into a polling center, step into a booth, cast your vote in privacy. Okay, so nobody knows who you're voting for. Just go ahead and vote. Basically, these votes will then get tallied up, sent to the election office in the state, And at that point, the state basically publishes their numbers. So a completely different scene altogether. Primaries is what people are mostly familiar with. Caucuses are a kind of right now an archaic kind of way of voting, in my opinion. Even though I like caucuses, but I think in today's day and age, just way too many people spread out over way too large of an area, and it's just too hard to deal with at this point. And as we learned from Iowa, I think there could be cases of potential corruption of the system. Anyway, let's talk about New Hampshire, why don't we? Okay, you see the little map of where New Hampshire sits relative to the other states in the continental U.S. But digging deep into New Hampshire, okay, is split up into two congressional districts, and each of those little blocks you see in that map represent individual precinct locations, okay, and what you see there is the 2016 New Hampshire Democratic presidential primary results by precincts, and purple or magentas to purples are precincts that had over 50% or more Bernie Sanders support, and things in green are precincts which voted 50% or more Hillary Clinton support, and yellows are basically nobody exceeded 50%. As you can see in 2016, dog, the state was overwhelmingly pro Bernie, and hence, he basically won the state in a landslide. Difference between 2016 and 2020 is that there are four or five more candidates running. Okay, so I don't expect 50% or more margins, if you will, or support in a lot of these precincts, as you kind of see here in 2016, dog.
I I agree with that assessment, Milt. I do not expect this to be any different than what happened last time. So I think the state's going to go, this primary is going to go, he's going to win it strongly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, but, now, because I'm really interested in seeing, who's going to start, dropping a little bit. It's almost like a game of Survivor.
Yeah. And you know what's funny about this is that you see those white blocks there? Supposedly they're uninhabited. So
Or undecided or something
they're
like
no,
that.
they're uninhabited as there
I
are
think
no
the
votes
last
cast.
I think the last thing I heard was there was like 30% or so were just like undecided, right? Which doesn't necessarily mean,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if that was necessarily for New Hampshire, if
No,
that
it
was
wasn't for New Hampshire. Yeah.
or
Yeah. I mean, it's basically what the map shows, right? You have the little box for blank areas, meaning just uninhabited. So there were not any votes cast in those particular precincts, evidently. I mean, it could
wow.
it could just be
But people
forest
just
land.
live there. I mean, they
Yeah, it's
understand that
forest
they have the
land.
right to vote when they're 18,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. I think those precincts, those locations in New Hampshire is just basically uninhabited forest. So
Oh,
there's nobody there voting. That's why it's uninhabited. So
just trees there,
yeah,
probably.
and trees can't vote, unfortunately,
We're getting
for
close
the
to Maine up
Democrats.
there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're getting really close to Canada. In fact, the northern tip of New Hampshire is Canada.
Oh, wow.
Maine is to the east, so Maine shares the eastern border, but the northern
Gotcha.
border
Yeah,
of
you're
New
absolutely
Hampshire is
right there.
Canada. Yeah, and the western border is
We should take
Vermont.
that little dip back from Canada, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
That's the candidate I would go with. The one that wants to conquer that little, spot right there, Milt.
yeah. I think there's a big deposit of adamantium right there that Canada and the U.S. is going to fight over in the future. Right.
Right.
Anyway, so let's get in. So that is the general details of the primary. In terms of who wins, okay. Again, this is going to be different than what was happening in Iowa. Basically, the state party would just release one result. Okay. Basically, the popular vote and the number of delegates that a candidate will receive. Okay. New Hampshire has 33 candidates. Okay. 24 of them are pledged. That means they cannot change their votes at the convention. Okay, and there's 9 at-large candidates that they have. Okay, and each of these delegates will be allocated based on the proportion of the statewide popular vote. Okay, as long as they meet or exceed 15% of the vote. Okay, meaning that if Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg get 25 and 20% of the vote, they and those are only two that actually exceed 15% threshold, that means they get allocated accordingly. Okay. And so if Joe Biden gets only 14% of the vote, guess what that means? He gets zero, right? Or if Amy Klobuchar gets 14.9% of the popular vote, she gets zero
It's kind
delegates.
of like
Okay.
jacks are better to open or something, right?
Yeah, yeah. And of course, there were a few delegates in there, which is kind of odd. I kind of noticed in New Hampshire, but some of them were actually allocated by congressional district as opposed to statewide popular vote. So they're allocated by the total vote within their district. And these are state rules. I don't make them up. Okay, every state's different in terms of how they allocate their delegates to the national convention. Okay, so a couple of key points here, scenarios that may or may not happen. Firstly, if no candidate meets the 15% threshold, okay, the Democratic Party rules state the minimum to receive delegates will be 50% of the vote received by the front runner. So, for example, if candidate A wins 10% of the vote, okay, so he or she doesn't hit 15, but candidate A won the popular vote with 10%, right? Then delegates will be allocated proportionally to anyone that receives 5% or more of the vote. That's where that 50% number comes into play. Okay, now if only one candidate gets 15% of the vote, that means the allocation is effectively a winner take all. It's like a presidential election, the electoral college, right? Everybody just goes to that one particular candidate. Pretty crazy stuff, huh?
That would be what would be totally crazy though, Mel, is
Yeah.
if like Bernie Sanders didn't get 15% of the vote, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I don't see that happening.
I don't know
But
either.
but we'll get into the polls and everything else later. And
Right.
basically, the official winner, obviously, just like in Iowa, is that the winner will be the one who gets the most delegates. Okay. Unlike in Iowa, the winner will be the one who probably wins the popular vote because that's how the delegates are allocated. In Iowa, it's like a state with many electoral colleges per county, if you will. So like Bernie Sanders won the popular vote, quote unquote, in Iowa, but Pete Buttigieg won the state delegate count. So as a result, Pete Buttigieg, quote unquote, won the state. If you believe the reports, yeah, because they're still in question right now because of everything else that went on in Iowa. But anyway, so that's how it works over there. And let's get into now what are the top issues that New Hampshire voters care about the most? Okay, and this is a poll, okay, done by WBUR, okay, a TV station out in New Hampshire, probably the only one there, okay, of likely voters in the Democratic primary, okay, and no surprise here, healthcare is number one, right? 48% of the likely voters in this primary say that that's their top issue, followed by environment, climate change at 34%, which is very interesting considering that nationally, if you took everybody, okay, independents and Republicans as well, climate change is actually like number 7 or 8. So at least with New Hampshire Democrats, it is an issue, a big issue for these voters here. And third is the economy, obviously, okay, at 20%. And you can see everything else that kind of goes down from there: education, gender, race, social justice, foreign policy, unity, civility, character, integrity, which is kind of an odd issue because because I've never seen that kind of issue pop up before, but it did in this poll here. Poverty, income inequality, which I believe is the most pressing issue in America, but that's uh, New Hampshire voters don't really care that much about it. Only 10%, 9% there. Then taxes, Anti-Trump is an issue for no other reason than just being against our incumbent president. 6% of the voters are just there for that.
I, I don't mean to cut you off there, Mel, but I
Uh-huh.
found that comical. I was reading
Yeah.
through that because it's like,
Yeah.
look at the stuff that's like below that. They look like pretty important issues, right?
Exactly.
But then it's just anti-Trump, right? Which
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised, actually seeing it's kind of low from because
Yeah.
this is made up of Democratic voters, correct?
It's made up of likely voters who will likely vote in the Democratic primary. So,
So we
so
would we would be assuming that most of them are Democratic
Exactly.
voters. So I got
Of course, you can have some shenanigans going on, where where you can see like a bunch of GOP people just the day of switching their registration to Democrat just to basically flood the ballots, stuff the ballot boxes with a particular candidate. You can see that happening. I'm not saying it will happen, but conceivably it could happen. No, but yeah. Who are most likely to vote, right? So it could be independents who might switch just to vote, or it could be GOP voters that will switch just to vote in the Democratic Party primary.
I just find
Yeah,
that
yeah,
comical as you go past your list of anti-Trump down the.
yeah,
It's just like
yeah.
those they look like such important topics, and then it's just kind of comical.
Yeah. And this is New Hampshire. New Hampshire is traditionally a very independent state to begin with a very independent electorate. So, they're kind of different, I think, than most other blue states, if you will, in terms of what their priorities are. Okay. Yeah. For example, I think in a lot more blue states, gun control and guns would probably be a more important topic to discuss, but not New Hampshire, right? Because it's a big hunting state, so it's Democrats and Republicans, like their guns. So, uh, it's just this is just New Hampshire, and that's just the way it goes. Now, maybe this has something to do with racial demographics, which gets me into my next point here, okay, as to whether or not we should be basically letting Iowa and New Hampshire serve as bellwethers for the primary election. And basically, what you see are three charts, okay, three bar charts here. And the first one is the U.S. overall demographics, right? Orange are Caucasians, light blues are African Americans, pinks are Hispanics, and greens are Asians. The purples are other, right? So look at Iowa and New Hampshire. These are the first two states in the running. Okay, basically they're going to be voting first. Are they really representative of the U.S. in general? No, they're pretty white bread, right?
Right.
They're very very white bread. So and should we be allowing Iowa and New Hampshire basically serve as bellwethers and impacting, uh, influencing the votes influencing voters, later on in the cycle. I mean, we shouldn't let these two, in my opinion, we shouldn't let these two states basically declare winners, future winners, if you will, and they have a lot of power to do so. Because, well, I mean, what happens is that whoever wins these states gets a lot of media coverage. They get a media bump in the polls, and all of a sudden, they win the primary, they win the nominations.
And out of curiosity,
So,
Mel, maybe you might have mentioned it before, but how many electoral votes does New Hampshire carry?
in the general election,
Yes, sir.
four, I think,
Okay.
four.
And that which is
Yeah, and Iowa
obviously a
carries
small state,
six.
which as you're saying,
Yeah,
just to confirm,
yeah.
it's like this state holds four votes in the electoral college, right?
Hmm.
However, look how important it is for what is going to be their possibly their candidate, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
some folks are going to drop after this one, I'd imagine.
Yep. And Iowa holds six. So yeah, so they're very relatively small states with demographics that don't actually represent those of America. Now, when these two were actually set up to be the first two states way back in the 1800s, early 1900s, maybe they were more representative of the U.S. demographics. But times have changed. Obviously, what is representative of the U.S. overall would be when we get into Super Tuesday. That's in March the 3rd, where 14 states will be holding their elections and basically deciding on how many delegates each candidate gets to go into the national convention. And you can see that the bar chart, right? The colors are pretty much equal to the U.S. overall demographics. Okay, but the trick is to last until Super Tuesday. Okay, we have New Hampshire now, and then we have two more states, Nevada and South Carolina. Okay, so and after that we get into Super
That'll be
Tuesday.
really. I'll be interested to see your chart on the demographics. As far as like how close they are to the United States, how close is Nevada compared to
I
uh, you know the
okay,
the
yeah.
overall United States.
Yeah, well, I believe Nevada will have a smaller white population and a larger Hispanic population, and South Carolina will have a larger black population. and a
That's
smaller white
I think
population.
that's a fair
Okay,
assumption.
and Nevada might have a little bit more of an Asian population. So, or Nevada will have another. So Nevada, if you want to say, well, what area state is most representative of U.S. demographics racially, probably I would think it would be Nevada.
That's probably a
Yeah,
good guess.
yeah. So anyway, so that is it for the uh, for this chart there. I just want to bring it up because I just feel like Iowa, New Hampshire just holds so much power, and they're not quite representative of the U.S. in general. So let's get into polling. Okay, so this is as of today, 2000, no, February the 10th, 2020. Okay, what we can see here, nationally, Joe Biden still holds the lead. Okay, this is an average, a Real Clear Politics average of all polls that have been done. Nationally, Joe Biden is still leading, barely with a 0.3% lead. Okay, but in New Hampshire, Bernie Sanders has a pretty large lead of 7.5 points. So he's up at 28.7%, and Pete Buttigieg is right behind him at 21.3. And look at that mess in the for the rest of them. Amy Klobuchar now, on average, is in third place in New Hampshire. Okay, with an RCP average of 11.7, followed by Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden. Okay, he was actually leading in some polls, New Hampshire last month, and he's fallen hard. Now he's at 11 right now, and Andrew Yang is sixth at 3.7. But it looks. I mean, Bernie Sanders looks very very strong in the state, but you never know what's going to happen, right? Until people go out and vote. I can see him getting a little bit more votes if Joe Biden supporters really really drop, even more than what he's dropped right now, and Amy Klobuchar supporters really drop. So, and then you see what's happening in Nevada as well, right? Joe Biden's winning in Nevada over Bernie Sanders, and in South Carolina, Joe Biden has a 12.5 point lead still. On average in South Carolina polls. Okay, and you like to bet. You're a gambling man, dog. Bernie Sanders at 41% of the nomination to win.
If Bernie Sanders gets 41%,
Yeah, will you take those odds?
I take those odds.
All right. Cool. Mike Bloomberg's in there in second place out of
Well,
nowhere, right?
one thing also really I
Yeah.
wanted to reiterate something you mentioned
Mhm.
also earlier in the stream was about like I was just saying hypothetically, let's say Bernie wins a state.
Mhm.
That's gonna you mentioned about the momentum shift,
Yeah. Yeah.
how much publicity that's gonna be for him right there.
Mhm.
You might start seeing those gaps, and then some of these might be overturned, like say in North Carolina here, right? And
Mhm.
it'll be in or California also here. That's fairly close. It might have a flip flop or two.
Yeah, you might. You might. Definitely. But look at the betting odds here. The interesting thing here is that Bloomberg is second, and Bloomberg doesn't even appear in this chart right now, except for in California, right? 4.3. That's because he doesn't even care about these early states. He's going after Super Tuesday. So he's basically saturating the Super Tuesday states of all these political ads and everything else, and that's his strategy there. So really, really interesting. I think numbers. Is if you just go back into New Hampshire, no, I feel like Bernie Sanders is clearly the odds-on favorite to basically win tomorrow night. But it all depends a lot of times on turnout too, right? Because Sanders supporters are generally, I believe, right, and it's my own opinion here, that Bernie Sanders does better when there's more turnout because his support is more grassroots and consists more of the younger people, right, who are just enthusiastic about him, who just want to go out there and vote, right. A lot of times, as we saw even in Iowa, that younger crowd didn't really come into play, right, and the turnout was actually even less than 2008 when Obama was running. Okay, in low turnout days, right, the more establishment candidates actually do better. So if it's gonna be a low turnout for tomorrow, then I can see this race getting pretty close. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty excited for this, but
Yeah.
because I told Milt earlier, I'd watched a lot of the
Hmm.
impeachment stuff that was going on,
Hmm.
and boy, they were really hammering on Biden a bit, and
Yeah.
so I was really curious how, uh, because I was actually kind of surprised to still see him kind of in the lead on some of these states after
Hmm.
what the stuff I had heard about him and Hunter and
Yeah.
stuff, with all that. I don't want to bring all that stuff up into this, but
Hmm.
I was kind of surprised to see, he's still got a pretty strong shot here. So
Yep.
we'll see if his money lasts though.
Yep. And Peter Griffin asked me, "Hey Mel, why don't you go put up the Quinnipiac poll that just came out today?" Okay, it's a highly respected polling organization, and basically it was a national poll, and you can actually see the numbers there in the middle, right? Biden has a 17% on nationally. Sanders, Bernie has a 25%. Warren has 14. Bloomberg has 15%. See, this is where the Bloomberg effect has come into play, right? He's just saturating, all of these states right now, basically building up a national presence. Okay, which is a completely different strategy than these other guys who are focusing on these early states. I mean, it's really going to, I think it's really going to change the game in future elections that maybe these early states won't even matter anymore. Klobuchar, Amy Klobuchar has 4%, Yang has 2%, then everybody else has 1% or less in this poll here. Now, Doug, you might not like this, but you might find it interesting. Uh, the same polling organization, Quinnipiac, ran hypothetical races against the incumbent, Donald Trump. And in all cases, the top six Democratic uh, candidates are beating Trump.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
But they said Hillary was like 10 points ahead of Trump
yep,
before,
yep, yep,
and he smashed her.
yep, yep, yep. So yeah, so take these
But that's
general election
funny to me.
predictions as.
And what's funny to me is like when I look at all of them,
Mhm.
I really I'm kind of rooting for Bernie a little bit because I think he's going to give us the best entertainment value when
Yeah.
if him and Trump actually do
Hmm.
debates or something, right? I'd rather see Bernie versus Trump doing debates versus as opposed to Joe. I mean, I think both are going to be entertaining as hell to watch,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of rooting for. I think Bernie's, he's not afraid to just call, Trump a liar or something, or
Hmm.
maybe put up their dukes or something, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I told Milt this earlier, folks. My prediction is that this election is going to turn out very much like when George W. defeated John Kerry. That's my prediction. Is that Trump's going to pretty much defeat the Democratic candidate,
All right.
just like W did to Kerry. I
Yep.
might be wrong, but that's my prediction.
Yeah. And if you look at that, lastly, one other point I want to make in that bottom chart here, the general election scenarios, is that Bloomberg actually has the highest margin against Trump. Again, it's this Bloomberg effect, okay? And Bernie is second with an 8 point margin. Then Joe Biden's at 7, and yada yada yada. So, and let's look at one other chart here, and these are trend lines, right? So what we just looked at was uh, a snapshot, right? So a static. Now let's look at what's happening through time and actually see who actually has momentum for this primary for tomorrow here. As you can see, Sanders is way up there in the lead, right? He's in that blue up on top here, followed by Pete Buttigieg. And then you have this other cluster of people with Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, sort of in the middle, hovering around 10 to 13%. They are below the threshold, guys. Remember that, okay? If they actually hit these numbers tomorrow night, they won't get a single candidate, a single delegate to the convention. And then you have the third group, the bottom tier group of people, Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, Tom Steyer, Deval Patrick. I don't even know why he's still in there, and Michael Bennett, same thing. I don't even know why he's still in there. and and the interesting thing about this is that it's the Pete Buttigieg surge right there in purple. You see that big old hike, big old jump? That was when Pete Buttigieg declared victory, and you can just see how much of an effect that media bump gives a person who wins the first state. Okay, I mean he went he went he, He
I
went
guess I
from
was like leveling off there.
the
Melville
purple.
was that like that dip when they were like, we don't really know, or kind of what's going on in Iowa. Is that what you're mentioning here?
No. This is no. What depth we're talking about? I'm talking about that big old spike for Pete
Yeah, you're
Buttigieg.
talking about he declared victory where?
Yeah, right there, where that little dip was.
Okay, he
Yeah,
did
yeah,
declare victory for that state.
yeah. He declared victory for Iowa.
Oh,
He-
for Iowa, that's what I was.
Yeah. With 62% of the precincts in, he declared victory. Okay, and based on that false narrative,
Yep,
okay,
right. I was wondering. That's probably why the little dip came
okay,
through.
the low dip is noise, right? I mean, I'm after the big moves right here.
Yeah,
So this big move was essentially because of the media surge that followed his quote unquote victory, right? Because the mainstream media is all about establishment candidates, right? They don't want to have any anti-establishment candidate like Bernie Sanders do well. Okay, so basically, so he popped up from a 14 average roughly, over to up to a 21.3 average where he sits today, right? Corresponding to Pete's surge is upward trend. Look at Joe Biden in the green. He went down because he had a really poor Iowa showing. Okay, he was in fourth place in Iowa, and he's been dropping like a rock. Okay, in the past week. Right? He went from an average about 17 and a half on average to now he's at 11, as you
yeah,
saw in the
I like
charts.
it.
Right? Also corresponding to Joe Biden's downfall is the rise and surge of Amy Klobuchar in black. Okay, so essentially what's happening now is that all that centrist support that Joe Biden had is now being split between Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar. More so with Pete Buttigieg, but Amy's picking it up too. And guess what? Those two are also centrist Democrats. Okay, Elizabeth Warren has been on the decline since about actually December. If you see her bronze chart, she was above 20 on average back in December. She's just dropped. She's continuing to drop, very steadily, but she's, her voters are more like Bernie Sanders voters, and with her drop, you actually see like some. You can't see my cursor dog, but in the middle of January, roughly,
Yeah, I can see ya.
yeah, you see it. You see where Warren's kind of dropping,
Right.
and that corresponds with the surge of the surge in Sanders.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was a
Yeah,
yeah, it was a total split there where
yeah,
you're showing Klobuchar and
yeah,
the Biden drop, and then
yeah,
with oh Buttigieg
yeah, Buttigieg, yep.
or Buttigieg. I can't pronounce his name.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah, yeah, and the rest of the bottom tier guys, even though Andrew Yang's my guy, he hasn't really done anything. He
That's what I
hasn't.
was
Yeah.
saying earlier. Was yeah, I totally saw your point, but what I
Yeah.
thought was funny
Mhm.
just that little bit after that, right? It's just kind of funny how that he declares victory,
Yeah.
right, and how that gives him that huge boost, right?
Exactly.
But then folks are kind of like, I'm not really sure, right? So that you just see that little dip. So it's not like it didn't have the effect of when he first comes out and declares victory. I just thought that it's amazing that one you see it from one way, right? How much of an effect it can have, right? When you
Hmm.
see it the other, it doesn't hurt it as much, So that's kind of what I was thinking
Hmm.
possibly happened there. Now he's just kind of leveling off and
Yeah.
find out what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, we will definitely find out what's happening tomorrow. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean that effect of these early states,
And then yeah, some of
it's
these down there, I'm just like, I don't expect them to be around much longer.
who?
Some of the folks that are
Oh
down there
yeah,
on the
yeah, yeah,
bottom, I
yeah.
don't expect them to be around much longer.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the only people that made the debate last Friday night was Andrew Yang and Tom Steyer. I mean, the rest of them are just kind of there at this point. I think they're going to run out of money eventually. I mean, I still don't know why Michael Bennett and Deval Patrick are still even in the race. They haven't appeared in any debates for months. Okay, Patrick has never appeared in a debate. Michael Bennett hasn't appeared in a debate since like August or July, right? And yeah, I mean, I just don't see them doing anything. They're basically just wasting money at this point. Tom Steyer is actually, he's polling poorly in New Hampshire, but if you go look at the charts in South Carolina and Nevada, he's doing pretty well. In Nevada, he's polling 10%. And in South Carolina, he's in second place with 18.5%. His campaign strategy here, he said, forget about Iowa and New Hampshire, right? Maybe he understands that they're not really representative of the electorate, in a general, as a whole, right? The demographics as a whole. He's focusing all his efforts in Nevada and South Carolina, and also it doesn't hurt that he's also a billionaire and he's also paying a bunch for TV ads as well, and just saturating, you know, TV as well as saturating social media like on Facebook. I mean, he's all over the place on Facebook. But so yeah, so I think that's his game plan. It's just to pick up some delegates in in Nevada and South Carolina. And hopefully that will translate into momentum into Super Tuesday. Um, you know, that's what I'm thinking. So just so he can have some kind of influence at the national convention. So there you go, dog. Any other things you want to talk about here in terms of?
No, that was very well done, Milt. Absolutely spot on there. Yeah, that's definitely great breakdown of where some of the possible votes are going now, and
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see the results from tomorrow and see how they kind of stack up with your chart there possibly afterward.
Cool. So let's go look ahead now in the calendar and what's going to happen. Okay. So tomorrow we already talked about it. It's the New Hampshire primaries, the Democratic and as well as the Republican primaries are going to be held tomorrow. But we already know who's going to win that, right? It's a foregone conclusion. Donald Trump won the Iowa caucuses, a week ago with 98.7%. Okay, so I think he's pretty much of a shoe in to win the New Hampshire primaries as well. So that's why we don't talk about that because it's kind of a foregone conclusion who's going to be the Republican nominee. All right. Then on the 19th, okay, so 8 days from tomorrow, there is going to be a Nevada caucus debate in Las Vegas. And let's see who qualifies for that. So far, only 5 of the candidates have qualified for the Nevada caucus debate, and those are Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, and Amy Klobuchar. February the 22nd, then, is the Nevada Democratic Caucus. So we'll get some more voting results for that. And then on the 25th, just 3 days later, we have the South Carolina primary debate, okay, in Charleston. And then on the 29th, a week after Nevada, we will have the South Carolina Democratic primary. And that's it for the early states going into Super Tuesday, March the 3rd, big time. Okay, the caucuses and primaries, the Super Tuesday. There's going to be 14 states that are going to be holding elections on that one day, plus American Samoa and Democrats abroad. Democrats abroad is just basically a generic name for expats living elsewhere in the world. Okay, that's what all it means there. And 1,345 delegates will be at stake on that day. Now, remember, New Hampshire only has 33 delegates, and Iowa have 41 delegates to the national convention. And in March, we're going to have 1,345 delegates. As a big states are going to be included in Super Tuesday, such as Texas and California. So
it's going to be interesting.
So do you think it's going to be a two-man race at the end of Super Tuesday, or you think some other people can still hang on?
March 3rd, there might be. Yeah, I could see that just being down to 2 or 3 possibly. I think right now, just looking at it right now, I think we're at Biden and Bernie right now. Mel, how are you feeling?
I'm thinking it's going to be Bernie and Bloomberg. I think Biden's just going to drop out. He's fallen like a rock. I think he's done. Honestly, I mean, to me he's a nice guy and everything. I just don't think his heart's in it anymore. And he's been melting down on the campaign trail this past week. So.
I was just curious if maybe say he pulls out of Nevada, he pulls out South Carolina. Is it going to give him enough momentum somehow to? But yeah,
it could. It
But
could though.
it doesn't seem like there's an end to the momentum dropping right now. That's the issue
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
with a loss tomorrow night, it's just going to drop even more. So unless he
Exactly.
decides to try to give some folks a pep talk somehow, but I really don't see it happening,
Yeah,
folks.
exactly. Because you look at those polls, right, from today, he's tied for fourth place with Elizabeth Warren at 11% in New Hampshire. So if he gets fourth or fifth place, what does that mean for Nevada, right? And here's the problem, dog. Say Buttigieg gets first or second place in New Hampshire. He has absolutely zero minority support nationwide. Because if you look at Buttigieg nationally, he's not even in the chart because of he has zero support from minorities. So he can win. I mean, he can win Iowa, New Hampshire, but he still needs to figure out a way to basically, um, get support nationally on a national level, especially amongst minorities.
Right. And yeah,
Yeah.
he's going to just because the chart you showed earlier, we know that we're going to see a lot more minority votes and
Yeah.
say, Nevada and South Carolina, of course.
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
the ball game can change, of course.
Yep. And yeah, it's going to be interesting what happens tomorrow. So yeah, yeah. So really, I think what's going to happen tomorrow is whether or not we will see the downfall of Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren. If those two get fourth place again, I really don't see why Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden would want to continue. I mean, I can see Joe Biden trying to continue only
Well,
because Nevada and South Carolina, but I don't see Elizabeth Warren continuing because if she finishes in fourth place, you know, in a state that's directly north of her, Massachusetts, that's where she's a senator in. It's directly north. It shares the southern border with New Hampshire. And
I
fourth
just,
place, what does that tell you?
well, just, coming from a
Yeah.
Republican here, folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I was on the other side right now, I'd be thinking, you know what? By March 3rd, I'd really want to be down to two people, right? I'd
Yeah.
want to get this party unified somehow, some way, and
Yeah.
no bickering and fighting amongst ourselves. If we're going to try to take down Trump, the
Yep.
only way they're going to do it is to be united, right? And they're going to
Yep.
have to find, they're going to have to stand, get behind their candidate, right?
Yeah.
And I think the more that the other guys drag it out,
Mm-hmm.
it just looks like they're all eating each other, sort of, right? So I
Yeah.
think that yeah, by March 3rd, that would be ideal. If you're a Democrat, I think you'd want to be down to pretty much two candidates. How do you feel about that, Mill?
I mean, yeah, I would love it. I mean, I would love it right after Super Tuesday that we should be down to two. Ideally, we should be down to one after Super Tuesday, a clear front runner. But I don't see that happening. But two is better, right, than like five that we have right now, because we definitely the Democratic Party needs to be united, and that's always been a problem with the Democratic Party is unification, right? Right now, there's a big fight between the progressive wing of the party and the the centrist wing, establishment wing of the party, and you know it's going to be that way, I think, for a while because the media will do anything to stop the progressives from actually winning a nomination because they're operating under a false narrative that of general electability, which is a falsehood in itself. What is general electability? Everybody thought Hillary Clinton, you know, had the best general electability over Bernie Sanders in 2016. Look what happened to her. Yeah. It's always been a problem in the Democratic Party, much less so, I think, in the Republican Party. I mean, with all this infighting and fragmented thoughts and chaos and everything else that goes on there, sure makes it exciting, though. So that is it, guys. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Dog, for uh, being here on such short notice. Really
No
appreciate it.
problem. Hopefully, I didn't mess it up too bad
No,
for you.
no, it was great. It was good stuff. And thank you everyone in the chat for showing up. Except to Shayna Secrets, thank you. Peter Griffin, thank you for showing up. Jake Cruz, and I think one more person, right? Apparently human.
Shayna was here, and
Yeah,
Peter,
yeah.
and
Yep.
Jake, and John Boy,
Yeah.
my grandpa, and yeah, all that.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's a political vid, right? So I doubt my subs actually care about politics that much because if you look at my other ones, it's the same thing, even though I get a lot of views from elsewhere. So go figure, right? So anyway, with that, everyone, thanks a lot for stopping by. And I guess I'll see you after the primary tomorrow, and just to share some quick thoughts about what happened and what's going to happen in Nevada. And also, Dog, anything else going on with you before I head on out?
Oh, not offhand right now. I just was messing around today. Next week I'll be doing some lives. Final Fantasy 14 with the new patch coming out, folks. So I play video games and stuff. So, and I'll be doing some more video edits at some point and lives. Just getting the channel started up again. So, just bear with me, and
Cool.
we'll get it going.
Cool.
Yeah, but
Okay.
thanks for having me on, Milt.
No problem. Always welcome. And with that, everyone, see you next time. Later.
I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
Ultra Ninja JK, dupla jinxa, bota chakra em cada linha de faca. Faz macramé no micado, base espadas por frases. Sintático, repara no que digo, é paradigmático. Não tenho paralelo, sou para lá de mágico. Sabes como rolo, martelo pneumático. Técnica secreta do monstro roxo. Estamos a meter-nos no dojo, estamos a manter combos no jogo. Só com uma espada nos tojos. Plano picado, não sabes de onde esta ave vem. Nenhum radar pode detectar onde está a nave mãe. Tu sabes bem. Somos a clique, somos o clã. É Monster Jinx cabrão, respeito ao vais comer tartan. Na terra do nunca não digo banzai. Vivo na espelunca e tenho um bonsai. Ninja que é ninja, ninja, frotas imperiais. E bate mal, logo bate mais. A minha crew não sem espelhos. Na rua, dragão azul, dragão vermelho. Sento o silêncio. Versus shinobi, nunca me canso. Sou de Nairobi, ágil como um ninja. Rápido como um ninja, letal como um ninja. Brutal como um ninja, fatal como um ninja. Forte como um ninja, secreto como um ninja. Devo mesmo ser um ninja.
Esta é para os meus ninjas, só para os meus ninjas. Onde é que estão os meus ninjas, 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 ninjas? Esta é para os meus ninjas, só para os meus ninjas. Onde é que estão os meus ninjas, 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 ninjas?